Darth Bane, birth name Dicel, was a middle-aged human male born on Apatras 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Bane was an adult when he escaped his homeworld and joined the Sith Brotherhood of Darkness. At first, he was a mere foot soldier in the Brotherhood until it was discovered that he was a Force sensitive. Shortly after, he was enlisted into the Sith Academy on Korriban. Bane quickly climbed to the top of his class before he became disillusioned to the Academy and its teachings. Eventually, he would sever ties with the Brotherhood, destroying their leader and many of its students before creating his own Sith Order, which enacted the rule of two: a master and an apprentice. One to embody the power, the other to crave it. Eventually, he would succumb to his own rule of two, expiring at the hands of his apprentice, Darth Zana. Darth Sidious, birth name Palpatine, was an elderly human male born on Naboo 82 years before the Battle of Yavin. Sidious became acquainted with the dark side at a very young age when he started collecting dark side artifacts, though he never saw himself as evil. Instead, as he would state to Anakin Skywalker, evil is only a label we place on those who threaten us. Eventually, he would go on to meet Hago Damash, aka Darth Plagueis, who would teach him the ways of the Sith Lords. Palpatine would go on to live a double life as a senator and a Sith apprentice. Eventually, Palpatine would go on to kill his master Darth Plagueis as he took on the mantle of Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. Palpatine would go on to orchestrate the Clone Wars, eventually dismantling the Jedi entirely through the Great Jedi Purge, only killing a few Jedi himself. For 2 decades, he would go on to rule the galaxy as Emperor until his apprentice Darth Vader betrayed and murdered him. Still, Darth Sidious is recorded as one of the most powerful Sith of all time, a culmination of the rule of two. As with all my videos, I will be comparing these two and their primes. This does not mean their age prime, but their prime in terms of their force abilities and their dueling abilities. What's interesting about these two is that they are bookends of each other. Bane is the opening of the Rule of Two era, and Sidious is the close of the era. For Bane, I see his prime as when he was affiliated with his Orbitalist armor and when he defeated 3 Jedi meditated masters in combat. He was at his height in terms of force ability and dueling skills of the time. For Sidious, I see his prime as sometime after the Clone Wars. By the time of the battle over Endor, I feel his powers were not at their height because he was not putting them to use as frequently. I will not be taking into account the books which say Sidious was brought back to life as a clone, especially now as they will probably no longer be official canon. Darth Bane stood at 2 meters tall and was built out with a heavy stock. To me, Bane was an intellect foremost. However, after his study sessions in the Korriban archives, Bane focused on training his physical body as well. His overwhelming strength helped him overcome 3 battle-meditated Jedi at once, including one of the best duelists of their order. He did have Orbitalist armor to help him resist otherwise lethal blows, but it was the fact that he could wear the armor at all that was amazing. His largest asset was his resistance to physical pain. Though the Orbitalist armor provided him protection, it also caused him great pain. Only a master of the Sith could resist such pain without becoming unconscious or succumbing to death. Also, there is evidence of Bane's brute strength. Even before joining the Sith and training in his force abilities, he was able to best a miner in hand-to-hand combat, even while the miner held a vibroblade. And of course, he overpowered his Sith and Jedi opponents with his physical strength in lightsaber and force duels. In short, Bane was a juggernaut. Darth Sidious stood under 2 meters tall and was relatively thin. Though his physical body was frail and old, his force augmentation of his abilities propelled him to outclass foes half his age. In terms of his physical appearance, it is currently recognized that he used an ancient Sith mask technique to hide his true face, as it was necessary for his double life. This included his degraded skin and red Sith eyes. It was not until he faced Mace Windu that his mask was broken. When he attempted to shock Mace with Force Lightning, it was repelled back on him, disabling his mask technique that he had used for so long. Though his age affected his physical appearance, it did not seem to hamper his physical abilities, managing to keep up with Jedi even after the Jedi Purge. Though Darth Sidious used Force augmentation very well, Darth Bane was simply too much of a powerhouse for him. Sidious would be able to keep up with Bane, and he would be swift enough to outmaneuver him, but I do not believe he would have the ability to outlast him. Thus, I have to give the edge to Darth Bane in terms of physical abilities. If the Sith had an equivalent to a master's degree, Darth Bane would have a doctorate of the Sith discipline. He spent countless hours studying Sith texts, despite the general lack of interest from the rest of his colleagues. He had an extreme desire to excel and perfect his knowledge of the Sith teachings, which led him to being one of the most powerful Force users of his time. He even went as far as to search for texts outside of the Korriban Academy, finding an old holocron from Darth Revan, which would inspire him to create a new order. His studies did not stop in the library, however. He used what he learned practically as well. One of his Sith instructors on Korriban, Githany, held private sessions with Bane, eventually training him how to use Force Lightning. Bane would go on to be so powerful with the ability, he could kill most opponents instantly with just Force Lightning. He was also an advanced user of Force Blast, which allowed him to cave in his master Qasim in a Sith cave. During combat, Force users put up a Force shield around them as a resistance to such attacks such as Force Push or Lightning, but still, Bane could penetrate their Force shields. Bane's Force abilities also offered him resistance to physical pain and poisons as well. He once combated the effects of Synox on the planet Ambria, though nearly succumbing to its effects. Darth Bane was also an advanced user of the Dun Mach technique, which gave him the ability to imprint fear and anguish in his opponents. Furthermore, he was able to resist similar attacks from opponents, putting up a powerful Force shield around him during combat. Bane had a natural affinity for the Force, but unlike most, he propelled himself to a grander level through focused training and intense research. Darth Sidious was regarded as being one of the most powerful Sith Force users of the entire Order. It is acknowledged that he had a comprehension of all known Sith abilities prior to his reign. He was also noted by his apprentice Darth Tyrannus and Darth Vader as being the most refined articulation of the dark side, the most complete expression of it. Specifically, Dooku noted that in the Force, Darth Sidious wasn't a shadow or a fog, but a void black hole of the Force. Sidious had such a skill with the Force that he would often forego using a lightsaber at all, saying that it was beneath the use of a true Sith. Even without formal training, Palpatine had the ability to block out his future master's mind-reading abilities. He also attained a fantastic mastery of telekinesis, able to lift and throw several Senate pods at Yoda during their encounter. Not to mention, he also had an astounding use of Force Rage when he needed to unleash, as showcased during his encounter with 4 Jedi Masters. But most of all, no other Sith matched Sidious's Force Lightning, which he had a complete control over. He could kill someone instantly with it, or torture his foes until they broke. His Force Lightning was so powerful he was even able to break Yoda's Tutamentis, which was the most powerful at the time for any Jedi Master. Though Bane was an extremely practiced Sith Master who honed and studied his skills to its near perfection, he simply was not the physical incarnation of the dark side as Sidious was. Unlike most Sith with natural talent, Sidious also studied his craft to perfection, controlling the dark side better than anyone before him. In most cases, in regards to the dark side, the user would be overtaken and overwhelmed by its power, but Sidious seemed to have tamed the dark side to his will, becoming the nearest and complete physical incarnation of the dark side itself. Even his apprentice Vader recognized his great power and never attempted to overthrow him without aid because his power was much too great. Though Bane had honed himself to create a powerful force shield, Sidious could still penetrate it, especially when he was able to penetrate Yoda's powerful force shield. Bane's ability in Dumatch would also do nothing against Sidious, and his Force Lightning didn't match Sidious's. Therefore, I must give the edge to Darth Sidious in terms of Force ability. Darth Bane carried a curved hilted lightsaber with a red synthesized crystal, which allowed him more cutting power. Bane was a master of the Jim-So lightsaber technique, though he was probably proficient in other forms as well, especially Sorisu, which he taught to his apprentice Darth Zana to complement her small size, and Juyo, which he used against her for the same reason. Jim-So is a highly offensive fighting form, which complemented the large stature of Darth Bane. It focused more on strong strikes rather than random twirls and acrobatics like Ataru. Sorisu was a highly defensive fighting form, which allowed the user to engulf themselves in an impenetrable defensive posture. Juyo was a form that was very ferocious and erratic and created unpredictable strikes. All his forms stemmed from Jim-So, which relied on parries and counterattacks. His parries would be adapted for Sorisu, and his offensive strikes would be adapted to Juyo. These three forms together, along with the variations his curved hilt allowed, would serve Darth Bane well against the many Sith and Jedi he would face. Darth Sidious carried 1 to 2 one-handed grip hilts with red crystals. He was regarded as one of the greatest duelists of all time, on par with his apprentice Count Dooku, Mace Windu, and Yoda. Though none of the many lightsaber forms were directly attributed to him, we can assume what they might have been. For instance, his dueling style was extremely aggressive, precise, and agile when he augmented his physical abilities. Therefore, we could assume his aggression came from Juyo, his precision came from Akashi, and his agility came from Ataru. But what is more likely is that he was a master of Niman, which encompassed all forms of lightsaber combat, mixing and matching. His knowledge of Niman would extend to his use of Jar Kai, as he would showcase against Darth Maul and Savage Opress. He would have a general ease with fending off multiple opponents like Maul and Opress, as well as Jedi High Masters Kit Fisto, Agen Kolar, and Saci Tin. Perhaps the reason he so easily dispatched his Jedi attackers was because of his unorthodox mix of Juyo, Makashi, and Ataru under the umbrella of Niman. Both Bane and Sidious were very versatile fighters. Though Bane had a specialization with Jim-So, he implemented Sorisu and Juyo to strengthen his core form. Though Sidious probably specialized in Niman, he implemented several forms within it to strengthen his resolve. They were both flexible within their forms, but Sidious is more likely the more powerful duelist of the two. When confronted by 4 Jedi Masters, Sidious easily dispatched 3 and matched up even with the last. When Bane went up against 3 Jedi, he needed assistance from both his Orbilis armor and his apprentice Darth Zana. What's more, Darth Bane would have had even more trouble with Sidious if he pulled out a second lightsaber. When Bane's master Kasim utilized Jar Kai against him, Bane went on a defensive and was uncomfortable with the moveset. However, if I'm taking Bane at his prime, he would have certainly adjusted for this, but he still would not have been able to outmaneuver a Jar Kai user. But Sidious does not get a significant edge, as Bane's ability in Jim-So would give him the ability to at least extend the fight with his parries and counters. However, ultimately, I think the slight edge would have to go to Darth Sidious as a lightsaber duelist. The fight between Darth Bane and Darth Sidious would end very quickly or gradual, but both outcomes would be the same. Though Sidious was very capable and spry despite his age and physical elements, Bane would be able to tough him out in terms of their physicalities. Though Bane was an accomplished Force user who dedicated hours to his study, Sidious was simply the dark side incarnate. And though they were both very diverse and flexible in their lightsaber forms, I believe Sidious would have the slight edge simply because he was more capable against Jedi Masters than Bane was. As I stated before, this duel would end quick or would take a lifetime. If it were to end quick, I believe Sidious's unorthodox form would catch Bane completely off guard as it did with Mace Windu and his companions. Sidious would spring out with one or two lightsabers wielded and quickly end Bane's life. If the latter were to happen and their fight was prolonged, I think Bane would find a way to lean on his knowledge of Surisu to fend off Sidious until he figured him out. Once Sidious tired and realized his lightsaber wouldn't get the job done, he would enter into a Force duel. At this point, Bane's Force shield would be tested. Sidious would begin shocking him with lightning. Bane would return in kind and may try to utilize his Force blast as well, which may stagger Sidious a bit. However, Bane would realize Sidious's lightning would be too much for him and rely only on his Force shield. But ultimately, Sidious would break through that too, and he would kill him slowly, frying him with his lightning. Bane would resist and would experience a painful death as he would not give up easily. His resistance to physical pain would leave him conscious much longer than even Sidious would expect him, but his efforts would be futile. Therefore, I deem Darth Sidious the culmination of the rule of two, the ultimate victor. Of course, this is all my opinion. I would love to see your thoughts and comments. I like discussing scenarios with all you guys. Do you think Bane would have willed out over Sidious, or do you agree that Sidious is unmatched in his skill? Peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always.